feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming at you Wednesday morning. It is April 16th. And coming up on today's show, we got Britt Robson, and we're going to let this episode sort of be led by what Finch and some of the players said at practice yesterday. A lot of commentary on Julius Randle, Anthony Edwards, and the roles they need to sort of thrive in this Wolves series. We'll get into that. We'll also talk some Luka, how they guarded him in the Dallas series versus, how they might look at him in this series now that he's surrounded by a little bit different personnel in LA. We'll talk Mike Conley, his role in this series, his ability to stay on the floor. We'll also talk about some of the big iterations this team can get to. We know that they have the Gobert Randle pairing that they'll start with, but there's Gobert and Reid, there's Reid and Randle, which all kind of tap into different styles that this team plays with. And then also, I just want to talk about the depth. We'll get into that as well. The Wolves should have a big leg up on the bench. So that and more coming up on today's show. I want to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Treasure Island Resort and Casino and Parlay Lounge is your place to watch all Timberwolves and Wild playoff games. They're doing watch parties for these games. All of the games will be on at the Parlay Lounge, and TI will be running drink specials during every game. Treasure Island is also teaming up with both the Timberwolves and the Wild to host official Game 2 watch parties. And at the watch parties, the Wild and Timberwolves will be giving away fully funded road trips that include airfare for 2, lodging for 2 nights, and 2 tickets to see the team on the road. The date and the opponent will be determined on that, but the destination is likely to be either team's first round opponent. So stay tuned to www.ticasino.com for more information. In addition to the road trip giveaway, each watch party will feature free food, drink specials, guest appearances, and more prize giveaways, again, including playoff tickets to home games and the road trip games as well. Treasure Island Resort and Casino is the exclusive casino partner of the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Wild.
Hey, yeah.
All right, we're now joined by Britt Robson. Britt, yesterday at Wolves practice, we got to interview Finch, Conley, Julius Randle. I think we'll get a couple more players today, but it felt like, maybe the playoffs is just like that, but it was very informative. I think we got a Wolves perspective on many, if not all, of the sort of topics related to this Wolves-Lakers series. So I thought we just kind of rip through some of these clips, some of the things that were said one by one. I don't know what stood out to you most, but I thought some of what Randle had to say was particularly stood out to me. And this was just about him and kind of his process this season of moving from needing to be a guy who scored 30 to more of a playmaker. And I think that's really relevant in this series. So we'll start with that.
A really good kind of comfortability with being a guy who doesn't have to score 30 in a night. How has that transition gone for you, coming from a place where you were and to having this role here now?
It's been great. Honestly, it's been like, for me, I feel like the biggest growth in my game is understanding like different ways to impact the game and impact winning other than just like scoring the ball. I obviously know if I need to go get 30, I can go do that. But I don't have to force that, and I can, let the game dictate, what it needs from me, what the team needs from me. And I would say like that's the thing that I've fought and enjoyed the most, throughout the season. And, as the season progressed and went on, like I took a lot of pride in that and a lot of joy in that, because the results usually ended up in wins. And that's, at this point in my career, that's all I care about. So, excited.
In terms of you saying that, were you fighting it early and then enjoying when you saw it start to come together? How'd that process?
I just think, like I said, I was in a place, like you said, for 5 years where, that was my role. That was my job. So, like, it was, like, more of a mindset shift than anything. It's like feeling like, all right, man, I'm not getting 30, so I'm not doing my job. When it's like, no, there's different ways to impact the game, other than just scoring a basketball. I don't think I have to prove that I can score the basketball. I know I've, shown that throughout my career. So, I think that's been fun, and it's allowed me to have a lot more balance, be more unpredictable, taking a lot of pressure off my shoulders, and then like just the trust in the guys. We got a lot of guys who are very capable on this team. So being able to trust them and, it takes a lot off my shoulders, and I can just be the best version of myself every night.
Britt, what have you made of that shift from Randle over the course of the season, and how do you see that, or maybe the likelihood of that applying to this series against the Lakers?
Well, obviously it's important. It would be wonderful to hear the same thing out of Ant's mouth, quite frankly, although not the 30 points, because let's face it, this team has shown that they get into droughts where Ant's point creation is vital. The last 2 games of the season against Cupcakes prove that. But with respect to Randle, he clearly is 1A or 1B, however, he's the second guy after Ant. But if he thinks of himself more as the guy, that's what stalled the offense in the first month and a half of the season or so. It short-circuited what Mike Conley can do. It certainly short-circuited what Jaden McDaniels can do and what Reid-Gobert can do. So there you go. All the other members of the starting unit. That's why, you don't need a long memory to remember that the Wolves starting unit was awful on offense to start the season. And a lot of that was Randle in the mindset that he talked about as being a top scorer on his team for 5 years in a row. So I think that's important. I think we can get tunnel vision on that. It is far more important, in my opinion, that Randle play good defense in this series. And that wasn't mentioned at all, and that's no coincidence. But that is also extremely important that the Lakers don't have a lot of classic bigs, and one of the ways Randle has been effective on defense for this team is handling more classic bigs. So I am hoping that what we see from him is more activity and awareness on that side of the ball, where he can't just be a guy who walls up people. Now, when it comes to LeBron, maybe in the post, or, Vando, Jackson Hayes, there are places, and Luka himself for that matter, it isn't like his skill in the post isn't going to be needed, but it's not as easy to assign him a defensive role, I think, against this team. And given that his defense, to me, has been the issue for most of the season, that is something that remains unaddressed. But when it comes to what he said, what he was asked and what he said, obviously it's good news for the Wolves and good news for Randle, because he seems in a really good place with it.
Yeah, it's the term like mindset shift, like that stood out to me.
Right.
And we've seen like the best version of this team, best stretches you've kind of seen that mindset shift from Julius Randle, where he is more the flirting with the triple double type player. I call him those 14-point triple doubles. It's like 14, 8, and 8.
Right.
When he's doing that, and when he's playing when he's engaged in guarding defensively, it's a mindset shift from his New York days or previously in his career on both sides of the floor. And I was thinking about that reminded me of Rudy's first year. And there was a mindset shift that really clicked in the second year last season, right, between he and Cat, sure, but it was really a lot about Rudy letting go of the way that he played with the Utah Jazz, and on both sides of the floor, right, adapting to a different scheme. The Wolves are not a high pick and roll team. They didn't spread the floor like Utah did. There were different disciplines on the defensive side of the floor that the Wolves wanted to play with that Rudy didn't when he was in Utah. And, as that has been reported extensively over the course of the time, like Rudy relented on some of that. And then by last year, the second year of the Gobert experiment, like, here we go. Mindset shift locked in, team sort of takes off. And that, I thought about that with Julius over the course of the regular season of like, maybe this will just be better next year. Maybe these things kind of click in after a full season, as they did with Rudy, and that's where you sort of get your opportunity. I think there's a case that it doesn't need to take that long because I think the Rudy year and his shift was delayed by Karl's injury that first season, the lack of rhythm that team had, the lack of continuity it has. They trade their starting point guard at the deadline. They get all those sort of things. I don't feel like Rudy had the opportunity really to have that cement sort of dry his first season with Minnesota. The variables are different for Randle. Like this, the pieces have been in place. This has largely been a healthy team. They've been trying to play this way the whole season. It would make sense that Julius Randle could make that shift quicker than Rudy-Gobert has. I think the question is, is Rudy just the type of player more likely to relent and accept those sort of shifts than Julius Randle has? And I'm not sure. I don't think it necessarily is, because we have seen Julius Randle recognize, all right, there are different ways that this team needs me to play, and he's had success while doing it. So I am not ruling out the possibility that this does sink in for Julius and is here for the playoffs. I think obviously there's a lot of difficulties in this matchup and all that, but just from a mindset standpoint, I do believe that Julius understands this now, that this is the best version of him with this group.
And I think the biggest X factor that you didn't include was the fact that Rudy had a lot more reasons to be stubborn. And Rudy came from organization where, he was on 60-win teams. He was on the top offensive teams in the NBA. He was the fulcrum for the entire organization at both ends of the court. He cost that team multiple draft picks and multiple starters. He had reason to think he was the straw that stirs the drink. Randle came in on a player option, not the main guy in the trade by most people's observations, with legitimate competition for his minutes as a starter, already on the roster. There were all kinds of reasons why Rudy could be stubborn. And by the way, assistant coaches who have worked directly with Rudy off the record have told me he's one of the most stubborn people they've ever met, in terms of, I want to do it my way.
He relented.
He relented.
Yeah.
Randle, I do think, understands that winning is going to be the thing that, if he gets an extension with this club at all, it's going to be because they have success in the playoffs, and he has something to do with that, I think. Because I think it remains an open question what his future is with this team, although the indications have increasingly been that the organization wants to stay with Julius Randle. And so now is the proving ground. This is when it matters. He's a veteran. He said, he's a proven scorer and proven to do certain things really well. What he has not proven to do is lead a team in the postseason successfully. His postseason numbers are not good. His playoff record is not good. He has been on teams that don't make the playoffs very often. And so this is his proving ground. He is a veteran at a very crucial turning point in his career. He's got an empathetic coach that knows how to use him. He's got really interesting components around him who can make him look good if he does well by them. There's all sorts of reasons for him to buy into this and to mean what he says in that clip you played.
39% from 2 and 28% from 3 in his playoff career.
Right.
That's a whole different thing, I think, to overcome than this understanding of the role. But one way to look at those numbers is to say he wasn't being used in an optimal role. Maybe he was needing to be the primary guy. And when he's the primary guy in a playoff setting, when things do change, his already middling efficiency numbers can drop in some.
What's both damning and forgiving is it's a small sample size.
Yeah, right. That's true. I thought just to keep kind of ripping through some of these on my ranking of next most interesting sort of thing being said the other day at practice was Conley first talking about LeBron and his ability to kind of solve the game. And then I kind of followed up with, that's part of Ant, what he's going to need to do in this series. I thought,
it was a great answer. Right. Good question. Good question and a great answer.
Here's comment.
Need to do, what do you guys need to do around him so that he can be playing that way?
Yeah, it's gonna be a big series for Ant. Like he's got to be able to grow up, right in front of us and be able to handle what he's about to experience. It's going to be a lot of trying to get the ball out of his hands. They're going to try to be smarter than us. They're going to try to wit us in a lot of different areas, and he's got to be patient. He's got to be able to be thinking ahead of the game. Like I said, LeBron does it all the time. Ant, you got to start looking at the second and third layer of things, and doing it for your teammates, doing it for yourself, make the game easier on yourself, and then us as your teammates, we have to make the game easier on you by knocking down shots and creating space for you and doing our part of it. So if we can connect on those things, I think he'll be fine.
Is it kind of time for that, you think, in your mind? I mean, you've got Ant's obviously played 5 seasons in the NBA now, and he's making his 4th playoff appearance, and Jaden and Nas will be their 3rd. Like, kind of time to start that grow-up process and taking on a matchup like this?
For sure. I think there's no time than better than right now. I think it's necessary for us to win, honestly. So if we're gonna have a chance to win the series, he's got to be that guy, and I think he can be and will be for us. So he's been locked in. Since we knew we were playing the Lakers, he was already texting the groups and getting us all ready and watching film and ready to go. So I know that he's gonna be ready.
Necessary to win, right, Britt?
Yeah. Again, it's a weird. If you listen to the talking heads who, fly by most of the teams and watch the big games only.
You don't think Ant should win Clutch Player of the Year?
Well, I mean, but also what I kept hearing is the Lakers are so dominant. They have all this stuff, and the only way the Wolves are going to win is if Anthony Edwards is a monster. And what they mean by Anthony Edwards is a monster is somebody who averages 40. And if he follows that mindset, if he has the same mindset as like the bullshit conventional wisdom that's out there, then they're in trouble, I think. Because we've seen that movie over and over again. It's a bad movie. And
it's like Detroit when he scored 53 and they lost.
Yeah. And so I think there may be a time for it. As I said, there are times when the Wolves need Ant to bail them out. And if he can sense when those moments are correctly. But what Conley is talking about is something a lot more profound. It's, back when Kevin Garnett was playing for this team and he would get ripped for the way he played. LeBron early in his career got ripped for the way he played. Making the right play over and over and over again. And I'll tell you, Rudy-Gobert is a huge key to this series. And if the only way he gets unlocked is if Ant allows that door to open. The only way that Julius gets to cook in his own mindset there of playing is if Ant lets that happen. The only way Conley and Jaden McDaniels, both of whom have shown when there are openings for them that they are capable, isn't that they always succeed at it. But if the bottom line is for the Wolves to increase their options of how to spring this upset, they need to have Anthony Edwards allow those options to present themselves and see what happens when those options are exercised.
Those options are going to present themselves if we assume, which I think is fair to say, that at some point JJ Redick is going to try to do everything he can to take the ball out of Ant's hands. And the most typical way we see that, right, is teams just putting 2 on the ball on Ant, just a straight double team at the top, or in pick and roll coverage when it's Rudy coming up to set the screen, it's the big blitzing that nobody got blitzed in the league more than Ant did this season. And that right there, though, that situation, I know it's not the only way you can try to take Ant out of it, but it's the most common one. You said Rudy, Randle, McDaniels. It's clear how Ant opens up that door. They put 2 on the ball, and if it's Rudy, you got to hit him on the short roll, trust him to be able to pivot and make that pass to a shooter around him, right? For Randle, it's the same thing. If it's, if there's 2 on the ball on Ant, it's his ability to, okay, now there's 2, we got it to Randle. Now Randle's playing 4-on-3 against the rest of the group. Now he's in an advantage situation. Julius in an advantage situation is not going to shoot 39% from 2 and 28% from 3. That's when he cooks. And then McDaniels, too, is the third guy you brought up. That's the same thing. He's the guy catching that spray out from Rudy. He's the guy when now Julius is attacking 4-on-3. He burns his guy. Help comes in. Jaden's wide open for the corner 3, a dive from the corner, present himself from the dunker spot, whatever it might be. Like, all of those easiest ways for those guys to help start with the Lakers trying to take out Ant recognizing it and giving it back to those players.
Absolutely.
To be.
Absolutely. I think that was a very accurate and succinct idea of what the Wolves need to do in the half court. And I would add, I really hope McDaniels puts it on the deck a lot instead of shooting that corner 3. For some reason, he seems to make a little bit more of them in the fourth quarter. So, maybe you a little bit more. Yeah. But I think he's an underrated playmaker. And I think especially if he has numbers, he correctly decides when he's going to the rim and when he's not a kick out guy, but he is a good interior passer. And so that's another way to get Rudy off, I think. Another way to maybe even get Randle off. But I do think that you're absolutely correct. Not only do the Lakers logically blitz Ant because that's typically the best way to go at him, but that's what their personnel dictates. Mm-hmm. Jackson Hayes is their starting center. Their most common 5-player lineup since Luka arrived doesn't have a big in the lineup. Mm-hmm. They play small. Vando is actually a perfect person for the strategy you're talking about in terms of blitzing him. We saw it here. Rui Hachimura has got good size. Finney Smith is a great, really barbed wire kind of defender. He's like 6'5", and he doesn't relent very easily. They have the tools to bollocks up Ant in double teams on the perimeter with gap help. If Ant forces that, it's going to get ugly, I think, unless we see like super duper playoff Ant, which is what the talking heads are envisioning.
Well, and that kind of did, to be fair, it did come up in Phoenix, and Phoenix had the same approach where they didn't have the like high quality point of attack defender to put on Ant in the first round last season. So their plan then is heavy gap help behind the point of attack, right? That's boxes and elbows, right? Behind them. And I think that will also be, I think it's reasonable to assume that will be the Lakers' approach as well. As, I mean, maybe Vanderbilt is a guy that you feel somewhat comfortable with on Ant at the point of attack, but basically anybody else, I think that shifts through there, even LeBron, you're going to want to probably have that gap help in there tight. And that's where Ant is going to need to, sort of break it. And he does. And in that case, that's not all ball screen action. It's beating the first guy, drawing the second, and going from there. I want to continue going on Ant a little bit because I thought Finch had an interesting comment, but we'll grab our first break here. To let you all know that today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. And if you got some leaky windows or a bathroom that needs a renovation or really any home improvement project, we'd love if you contacted YHIC. You can do that by going to 866-777-YHIC or online at yourhomeimprovementco.com. YHIC's deal that they have going on right now is buy 2 windows, get 2 windows free. They also have 30% off on bathroom renovations, simple shower or tub to shower conversions, or a full-on bathroom renovation. If that's something you need this spring, you want to get something taken care of, we'd love if you considered Your Home Improvement Company. Whatever the project is, Your Home Improvement Company offers great financing deals that require 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payment until 2026. Again, 866-777-YHIC or go to yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. They got some numbers up there for now. 2 Wolves ones I love for game 1. I think like this Rudy-Gobert number of 24 points plus rebounds plus assists is a representation of the narrative that Rudy-Gobert is going to be played off the floor in this series because everyone thinks he can't play if Luka is on the floor. That's a low number. I feel confident that Rudy-Gobert is going to have more than 24 points plus rebounds plus assists. The other one I had is Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 11.5 points plus rebounds plus assists. I think that's assuming that he's the 8th man in this series. And I don't think Nickeil Alexander-Walker has been the 8th man on this team going back like a month plus. He has filtered into the rotation earlier. I also think, a lot of people are talking about DiVincenzo, starting over Conley, whatever. I think Nickeil makes a lot of sense out there. I think he's a good guy to guard Austin Reeves, which is kind of the Conley issue. I just think Nikhil's going to play a lot. I think Rudy's going to play a lot. And that's enough to boost those numbers up there. Obviously, you can check out Lakers numbers on there. But if you want to make a daily fantasy lineup, you can do that at Prize Picks for all these games. Obviously, not just Wolves, Lakers, but the entire playoff landscape. If you don't have an account, you can make one at prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Use promo code Dane, and your account will be credited with $50 when you make your first $5 lineup. Britt, with the Ant getting doubled, Ant solving the game part of it, it's not all Ant. It's also about his teammates. If Ant does solve the initial look of the defense, finding ways to be able to get it back to him. And I thought off the top of my head that the ability of that had grown over the course of the season, particularly maybe the last 6 weeks. The Wolves have been doing a better job about that. I asked Finch about that at practice yesterday.
Teams are designing the defense to kind of take Ant out of it. Do you feel like you guys have improved in your ability to still involve him, and how so?
Yeah, I think Ant. It starts with Ant. His recognition of what's going on has gotten better and better. His ability and timing of making the right play and the right read has gotten better and better. I think his frustrations about how teams guard him, I think he now embraces it. So the maturity around it's gotten better. And we're just better when both Ant and Julius are guys that are flirting with triple doubles. If they're flirting with triple doubles in the stat line, then that means everybody's getting involved and we're making the right play. So
yeah, there's that flirting with the triple double idea to, again, not just Ant, but Julius as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this in the 5 years that Finch has been here. 4.5, I guess is what it technically works out to. What is his offense all about? It's about 3 things. It's about moving the ball, it's moving without the ball, and making quick decisions. And that is how you get that quasi triple double from those 2 guys, is that they're moving the ball, people around them are moving without the ball, and they're making quick decisions to get off the ball. And if everyone else follows suit when that happens, then what happens is that Ant gets the ball back in more advantageous circumstances. Mm-hmm. That's obviously the way it should work. Well, the Wolves had the 3rd best offensive rating, efficiency-wise, in the last, since the All-Star break. I would say that flow offense was operating at a high level. Now, granted, a lot of that efficiency also came from the fact that Rudy played a lot of weak front courts and dominated there. But I also think that was also good practice because you saw, I mean, it took them a while sometimes. They had to be yanked into watching. And, hey, you come in after halftime where Rudy has like 6 for 6 and they say, hey, you can get Rudy whenever you want, Mm-hmm. But I think having an offense that has proven to work when it's expanded beyond 2 ISO ball handlers has been a great playoff primer for this team's mindset going in. I think that they really do need to practice that triumvirate of things that get that offense working. And the fact that it has worked and can work, and the fact that you have a DiVincenzo coming off the bench. You have Randle as somebody that you move in and out of the lineup against different configurations early. Randle is a key piece in the rotational puzzle because he can be so versatile. Having not played with confidence right now, the thing that I would like to see most right now, and it's vital for him as well, is for Naz Reid to gain his mojo. If we see January Nas Reid, this playoff series gets a hell of a lot more interesting. I will tell you, it will be a offensive fireworks, and it'll be a hell of a lot of fun. If Nas continues to be frustrated with the calls against him on defense, with the clank threes that cause him to pause for just a second, his traditional decision-making has gotten a little slower with this frustration, and that has really affected his game. But I will tell you that the components are there on the roster.
Yes.
For this to be a really fun series. There's a mystique around Luka and LeBron, and rightfully so. One is one of the top 5 players in the game right now. One is one of the top 2 players of all time, and they have decent role players behind them. Redick has proven to be a good coach. They're a worthy team, but they finished 1 game ahead of the Wolves in the standings. The Wolves had a better offensive and defensive rating in the time since both of them have been playing since the Luka trade. This isn't a wide gap. I get it that almost all the pundits are calling it for the Lakers. You put a gun to my head, I'm probably going to do the same thing. But I do think it has the possibility of not only being a really, really fun series, but there is going to be some surprises if the Wolves play the way they can play, and a nation of people who haven't been watching the Wolves all year will suddenly start to embrace some new concepts about this team.
Yeah, it does feel like that the offense needs to be great. I think that third on offense since the All-Star break overstates it some.
Absolutely.
Given the opponents. But it does also highlight a gear that this team has. And it's not just like one thing. We start talking about, Ant needing to solve the coverages that he's going to face, and his teammates needing to put him in a better position. Well, they have shown and figured out ways to be able to do that. We talked about Ant getting off of it himself, but they've also gone to Ant starting possessions off ball often, playing like a traditional 2, coming off of pin downs, finding himself on the side of the floor where it is harder it's not even possible to really put gap help on both sides there. We know that's where you get superpower. Ant is attacking from the slot there against a shifted defense. They can put him in those situations, and that can have this team operating at a 120 offensive rating plus, which is what they were when in this post All-Star break time. But it's not just Ant. There's other gears to it. And a main one in this time, though the defense has been pretty terrible when it's out there, it's the non-Gobert minutes, and it's the Reid, who you just mentioned, and Randle in the front court together, and that group playing often out there with DiVincenzo, Alexander Walker, and even sometimes Ant out there with them. In that group can also have potent offense, even if Ant isn't out there, right? You can even we've seen those bench groups, Reid, Randle, DiVincenzo, Alexander Walker have elite offense this season, and they can do that too. But it's not just like put those guys out there and they will do it. How they do that is by playing when that group is out there with more ball and body movement, and doing kind of that flip in your head of like, all right, Rudy isn't out here now. We need to be moving the ball and our body when Rudy's out there, but we can just move it more randomly and freely and tap more into that concept offense, that flow that Finch wants to play, because Rudy's out. We can let go of a little bit of the structure. I think it was you who asked Mike Conley about the half court offense and the need sort of for body and ball movement. Here's Conley.
It's a half court ball movement. What's the best way to attack this Laker team?
We're still in the middle of watching the film, but I think a lot of it is going to be trying to create distortion by, drive and kick, making our bodies move a little bit more, less ISO, less, slow basketball. I think moving the basketball, trying to get them moving a little bit, because they do load up. They do create a lot of help situations where they're not just relying on the on-ball defender to get the stop. They're relying on the gap help and the guy behind them. So for us, it's about being fast, being quick with our decisions, pushing the ball, getting out and just really trying to put a lot of pressure on the paint and make them have to move a little bit.
How much do you believe that they can do that?
I believe it's definitely possible. I think it is the key to the series. I do think it's going to be an offensive series. I think that Luka and LeBron are far better at that end of the ball than they are at the other end at this stages or various points in their career. I do think that if Ant brings the ball up and gets that wall with determined gap beside them, you swing the ball over to Mike Conley, you have a high pick and roll with Rudy and Mike. There's a lot of scrambling on the suddenly weak side with all those players there to comfort, to combat that. That's a fairly basic adjustment. Ant comes down, two guys are ready for him, two guys are ready to be partially ready for him. And all of a sudden you're playing pick and roll with Mike Conley and Rudy-Gobert with no bigs on the floor. Right. I mean, I'll take that. Mm-hmm. Also, relative to what you were just talking about, Naz and DiVincenzo like to play in disruptive circumstances. And one of the ways you disrupt a Laker team that has 40-year-old LeBron James, 42-year-old whatever, and still not svelte Luka Doncic is to fly around on offense and move the ball. And you're going to get burned sometimes with that. Mm-hmm. But if Naz is in the right mindset and can find that gear that he has, I mean, we called it the Iowa Ants at the beginning, back when he was doing it with Jalen Noel and Jordan McLaughlin and, Taurean Prince. Yeah. I mean, it was glorious. It was fun basketball. You almost didn't want the starters to come back. And so you've got that now with DDV and Naz and, various personnel on the floor. And Ant likes that too. And, what's interesting about it is Ant gets a break. Sometimes you'll see that, all Ant has to do is come down and Dante and Naz are busy hoisting threes, by the time they're down there. If that gear can click in for this team, and they force the Lakers to have the pressure to score a lot more than they're accustomed to because their defense isn't working, then it's a really interesting series. Now, the last time the teams played, obviously Rudy didn't play and there was a lot of people out, but the Lakers defense was in the middle of their best stretch of defense in the season. And they were great. And Dorian Finney-Smith, I've always loved him. He played with Luka in Dallas. People forget they were teammates for a while. They have a tremendous net rating together on the floor in LA. They know each other. Dorian Finney-Smith is hitting 40% of his threes with Luka since Luka's joined the team. Luka's hitting 37.9%. Connect is hitting 40.8. Reeves is hitting 39.6. They are a really good three-point shooting team. So it's going to be an offensive series. The last thing I want to say on this, just when you were talking about Gobert, and I love Gobert. I think he's a key to a lot of what happens, and he is Mr. Accountability. But there's also something about not having Mr. Accountability on the floor sometimes when the kids get to romp. Let's remember when Gobert was out because his child was being born and they destroyed Denver. Let's talk about when Gobert was out this year and they beat OKC twice without him. Mm-hmm. There are times when the Timberwolves are a wrecking crew without Gobert, and it's because they're freed to play a lot looser than they otherwise do. The pace goes up. The decision-making is much more rapid. They're less worried about making mistakes because the stepfather's not on the floor. And it is a different mindset. Now, sometimes it's catastrophic. It's a gamble. But I think there will be times when this second unit, if they can get on their horse, and again, I just can't emphasize enough. I think that Naz Reid has a lot to prove, maybe more to prove in this series than anybody on the roster, including Julius Randle. And if he can get into that groove that made, people tattoo his name and wave towels, then it's going to be a fun series.
I think I everything you said is right and true about Rudy, and those things happen. And there's definitely been times where this team has looked really good with Reid-Gobert not on the floor, again, particularly offensively. I think the thing to focus on, though, and probably the requirement to win, is they need to have that gear when it's Reid and Randle, who are your front court, and you're hopefully getting all that offense and finding a way to survive defensively. But you need the Rudy element too. They need to put both of those games together. You can list off the OKC game and be like, yep, take that and take the many games this season where Rudy has been an absolute force on the interior, and when teams have decided to not play a center or a subpar caliber center that he's killed. They need to be able to have both of those gears within the same game. And I will say, with this team and the Finch tenure, the Gobert tenure, the concept of toggling, we've talked about so many different times with Rudy on and off the floor. Going back to Cat, they wanted to play Cat up in coverage at the beginning and Rudy back in coverage. That this team struggled to be able to turn that switch on in their head of like, we're playing this way with this guy, we're playing this way with the other guy. You would hope, year 3, right? A whole season where your team's been relatively healthy. You've had the opportunity to learn how to drive in first gear and second gear, that they can do it. And I just think that is a requirement.
Who's important for that is DiVincenzo. Sure. Because DiVincenzo comes in and doesn't care what people were thinking before he came into the game. Sure. He is going to change the game the way he wants to change the game. And sometimes it's reckless and it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. But when it's contagious, it's a lot of fun. And we've seen, that second unit is, I think, when you're decided underdogs in a series, I think it's okay to press the gamble a little bit. And I don't necessarily want to see that second unit being too self-conscious out there. I want to see that second unit take the battle to the Lakers, especially when the Lakers are on defense and they're on offense. And I want to see them cavort and enjoy and have fun and have Redick calling timeout on an 11-2 run. And it could equally happen that Finch is calling timeout on an 11-2 Laker run. Yeah, but right. you have to accept that because the risk, I think, under this circumstance is worth the reward. If you're going to play it safe in this series, I think the mystique and all the attendant, things go around. If I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I'm just saying these are the facts. If you're a referee and the game is on the line and LeBron James is involved in a 50-50 call, you are far more likely to not be crucified if that play goes LeBron and the Lakers' way. And that isn't a conscious decision. It's a bang, bang play. But it is kind of like the human survival instinct, I'll make this call, and this is the call I should make. So I think that's a factor. I think the factor that the Lakers have home court advantage where they've been excellent this year. I think the factor that there is a sentiment of how great it would be to see the Lakers move on to play a historically good OKC team. There are all these things that are working against the Wolves that, in my view, makes it so that a little bit of get frisky and see what happens. See if that works. And, if it doesn't work, maybe try it one more time. And if it doesn't work again, well, then, maybe you got to do something else. But I do want to see this team play smart, but also play free.
I think that's a way to start talking about Luka Doncic, Britt. Which is obviously a huge variable in this series, is how they're going to guard Luka Doncic, and we can talk about that. But Chris Finch was asked at practice about kind of the difference of this Luka with the Lakers versus the Luka with Dallas that they played in the conference finals last season. Here's Finch.
Is facing Luka with this team much different than the Dallas Luka, or like how do you approach him?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think things certainly, every team's a little bit different. He's still the same amazing player. When the ball's in his hands, he just controls so much of the game and the way it's played. So we got to do a better job of disrupting that. There's certain things that we learned from being in a series with him last year that we have to put into action this year. Our discipline around him and those execution of those things, it has to be better. I think last year we were kind of like feeling our way through some of it, and then we're gonna have to be ready to do a multitude of things.
So Britt, if you humor me here, I heard the feeling our way through it part with Finch, and I went through and watched the clips of Luka from that Dallas series, and I didn't watch all 5 games. I watched the clips of it, so just to listeners, I might be missing some sort of context or forgetting that somebody was in foul trouble. But I think this just serves as a helpful reminder of how they approached Luka in the Western Conference Finals last season. So game 1, they start with Jaden McDaniels on Luka Doncic, Antis on Kyrie. They started with trying to play Rudy and drop, see if they could survive that, kind of like make Luka bet first, and then adjust off of that. They got cracked in the drop right away, just traditional high screen and roll. That's when they started finding Lively and Gafford on the roll and the lobs. Obviously, in the context of this series, there's a question: can Jackson Hayes do that? Can anybody on this Lakers team do that? Later in that game 1, they start blitzing the pick and rolls. They go, nope, we're not playing drop against Luka anymore. When they started blitzing it, what Luka would do at the end of that game is he was like, nobody come and screen for me because I don't want to get 2 on me. And he would just have Lively stay low in the dunker, and he would just isolate on, he would just isolate on Jaden or whoever was guarding him. Kyle Anderson guarded him a bunch in that game. It's the same matchups in game 2. Again, McDaniels on Doncic, Anton Kyrie, still a lot of Kyle Anderson. And if you remember in that game 2, the Wolves get up really big in the first half. And it's the third quarter. I think the lead got as much as like 16, something like in the teens, for sure. And that's when Dallas went to that double drag, right? Where it's 2 guys setting a screen.
The death
play. This was, I mean, in hindsight, having watched all the clips, this is where it ended. I mean, this is what they couldn't solve. They couldn't figure it out. It's 2 people setting a screen for Luka. Screen 1, screen 2. And what they would do is one of the bigs would slip out of that through the middle.
And kill the low man.
Yeah, just kill the low man. And Luka, I mean, the Luka, like, when he was trying to get that, his ability at 6'7", 6'8" to kind of stand up straight, throw that over the head zip pass to the rolling bigs there. It was a game that it very much felt like the Wolves were going to win. The Wolves had no answer for that coverage. And so what they did at the end of that game is game 2, the Wolves just to start switching everything. And that's how you get Rudy on Luka at the end of game 2. Luka hits that shot on him, screams at him, whatever. You'll remember, though, the possession right before that, Rudy did a really good job on Luka on a switch. It's not something Rudy can't do, but I think that serves as a good example of how the Wolves are going to go through it. Is we're going to try other things first until Luka is going nuclear, and then we're going to have to adjust to playing a coverage that we're not as comfortable with, but works. I'll just only go through game 3 because then it was kind of over.
No. I think this is all really helpful. I'm trying to remember the things I want to comment on.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll give your head. So it's game 3, and they come out with the double same matchups again. McDaniels on Luka, and the Mavs are like, all right, we figured this out. Double drag all day. And the Wolves, what they tried to do in that, they started trying to switch Conley because they were trying to really bring Conley into the double drag. So they switched Conley onto Luka right there.
Luka's no choice.
Yeah, they had no choice. It was desperation, and Luka was like, okay, bet. First play of the game, he gets a step back 3 once he gets Mike switched on to him. And then the Wolves are trying to keep Conley out of it, and Luka's doing those over the head zip passes to the middle over and over again. And it was just it just kind of devolved from there. They never really had anything that at that point or kind of moving forward that you're like, here's a real rhythm the Wolves had. It had felt like by that point that Luka had figured out everything other than just Jaden in isolation. And I don't remember what I thought about it in the series, in the conference finals last year. I don't think it was my opinion that Jaden did like the best job or a great job. I'm just telling you, man, going through and watching all the clips, I was just like, okay, finally, here's a clip where it's just Jaden and Luka. This is as good as it gets for the Wolves. I thought it's shifted my mindset into that's the best thing the Wolves can do is it's just a possession where even if it's pick and roll, it's Jaden finding a way to stay attached and be the guy on Luka. Kyle Anderson was helpful. He's not even on the team anymore, so that is obviously irrelevant in this case. But I'm just thinking going into this, the best thing they can do and the most hopeful thing is to keep as many guys out of the action as possible and let Jaden try to take care of business and limit, Luka, much like the Wolves tried to limit Nikola Jokic in the semifinals last season, because the Wolves had no coverage answers for Luka Doncic by the time we got 6 quarters into the Western Conference Finals last year.
It was a great summation. What the first thing I wanted to react to is this whole idea that Luka cooked Rudy or whatever, and that Rudy's afraid to face Luka, and it's just, oh man, you're just dumber. I'm sorry, I just made everybody dumber by repeating it, but
you did.
Luka Doncic hit a 30-footer. He was going to hit a 30-foot over, Manute Bol or Sidney Moncrief or, that was a shot that was going to be made if he made it and was going to be missed if he missed it. Who was guarding him made no fucking difference. If you shoot a 30-footer, you don't have a lot of people around you. That's why you shoot the 30-footer. Otherwise, the shot makes no sense. You shoot it because you know you can make it from that distance, and nobody is pressuring you at 30 feet unless they're picking you up 94. So that whole narrative of, Rudy can't be switched or it needs to be played off the floor or whatever. Switching is not a bad idea if you can switch intelligently. What the problem was, I think, was that if you get into pick and rolls and you get into multiple actions and you have the kind of personnel the Mavs had, they had a great lob threat right at the rim of the dunker spot. They also had bigs, guys who were not small anyway, at least 6'7" and up, who could hit the corner three or drive really well with well-timed cuts.
Sure.
I mean, they had a really, really great contingent of people. Now, I think LeBron does fit that role. I think LeBron can hit a corner three and knows exactly when to cut. I think he's a real threat with Luka there. And I think Vando, in his own weird way, is also, he's proven that he can be really good on cuts. But I do think that they are much more of a team now that shoots threes. They are, threes from Reeves, threes from Connect, threes from Luka himself. And they are not they're not a lob, Anthony Davis isn't in the building for the Lakers anymore, and they don't play bigs. So hopefully the low man issue is gone. But if they do manage to put Conley in that low man difficulty, then what I would say is that's disqualifying for this series right now. I mean, if Conley gets played off I think
Conley was a major problem in those clips. Yes.
It is far more likely that Conley gets played off the floor in this series than Rudy, in my opinion.
Sure. I think the factor we know from last season, from the conference finals, is Mike Conley was not healthy in that and trying to play through it.
But he was also, he
absolutely
was basically having to guard the cutter. It was sad, quite frankly.
Absolutely. And I think even Mike Conley at 100% health would not have been able to effectively chuck Daniel Gafford or Derek Lively on the roll, right? But there was this does lead to a bigger Conley thing that we should probably talk about, is just his viability within this series, and that'll be a factor if they're trying to expose him as the low man or the bigs on the roll again. They're not going to be as good at that. But just in general, Conley struggled offensively in that series as well. I asked him about his health then versus now. Here's Conley.
In the conference finals, what were you would you have liked to have done better, but were held back from being able to do due to where you were at from a health standpoint?
Really, it was everything. For me, it was not being able to move. I couldn't move defensively. Couldn't move as far as putting pressure on the rim or just putting pressure at all with the pace of the game. So I think that's an area where I'll have to, create more opportunities for us by getting the ball out and just throwing it ahead, trying to get into the paint, trying to make plays, not for myself, but for just the team, the machine to start to move a little bit, especially when it gets sticky in the playoffs and physical. So I feel good right now, just trying to keep that going, and hopefully we can apply that early in the series.
I mean, what do you think the odds are that he isn't starting or doesn't have a primary role in this, at least to start it? I mean, I am operating under the assumption that it's business as usual.
Absolutely.
They're not thinking about starting DiVincenzo or Alexander.
No.
I mean, maybe they are. They haven't tell us that, but right, that's our assumption.
I think if you don't play Conley, you are abandoning the idea that you're doing the flow. You're moving the ball, moving without the ball, and making quick decisions, because as I just got through talking about, Mike Conley is one of your primary playmakers when people get off the ball, because he is ignored relatively. And if you're ignoring a guy who's shot 40% for the last 3 years and is one of the better pick and roll players in the NBA, with arguably the best pick and roll roller in the NBA, then you're punting a lot because you're afraid of what happens on defense. And what I have noticed about Conley's plus minus net rating, whatever you want to call it, is it careens. It goes from really good to really bad. And a lot of that depends on the dynamics of the game. How the Wolves are playing and how the opponent is playing the Wolves has a lot to do with Conley's effectiveness or lack thereof. And I don't think you want to short circuit that dynamic. You want to see what happens. And I think Conley deserves that, for one. Also, I think that if you want to make sure Gobert is unlocked on offense, Conley is very important. He's not as crucial as he's been in previous years, because Randle and Ant, I think, are getting a little better at that in terms of involving Rudy. But I do think that there is the potential. That Luka, as smart as he is, knows how much fun it was to have Conley out there when he was working. I mean, first of all, point guard matchups doesn't compute, because Luka's about 240 and Conley's about 195. I mean, and Luka has 3 or 4 inches on him. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And so there is an obvious defensive discrepancy, I'll call it, that doesn't have to be disqualifying, because the Lakers don't have the personnel Dallas had.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that you can make Mike Conley a weapon on offense if they're playing intelligent offense in the half court. And I do think that Conley is a prideful guy, and he's had a really good, second half of the season, and he can't change who he is on defense at this stage in his career, but he knows how to play. He has figured out the game. I loved his quote the other day about, I get a chance to match wits with the guy who's one of the best, one of the most profoundest thinkers in the NBA, and LeBron. I mean, Mike Conley is a student of the game and also a sage of the game. He is a master. And so to throw that on the sidelines prematurely before he's been, tarred and feathered on defense. I would make sure that he is a distinct liability on defense before I'd short circuit his minutes. I just think there is a possibility that he will be a liability on defense.
Yeah, the way I'm thinking about it is not like Conley can't play in this series. What I'm thinking is when Conley isn't playing well, Nickeil Alexander-Walker needs to come in and play well, because that could be a spurt during a game. That could be a whole game. I mean, like you said, Mike's production this season has been very variable, right? There have been a lot of games, even in this second half of the season window when he's been healthy, that there's still been a variability to it, given opposing personnel or whatever's going on.
It's the way the game is played too. There are certain things. If you want to take Mike Conley out of the game,
sure,
you probably can, but that opens you up to all kinds of other things the Wolves can burn you with at both ends of the court. So, it is one of those things that how are the Wolves playing as a team? How are the opponents playing as a team? Every game is its own, blank slate. But but there are possibilities where Conley shines, and there are possibilities where Conley is bad.
And I just think, like, even in the Conley's bad pathway of this, and a lot of people are talking about DiVincenzo. I think, at least with the pattern of the last 6 weeks of the season it's Nickeil who is the one who is getting those opportunities in lieu of Conley. Not necessarily playing more minutes than DiVincenzo, but I think if DiVincenzo and Alexander Walker were both kind of like 1.5s at the beginning of the season, like Nickeil has slid more into being a guard, while as Dante's been more of a wing. It's just kind of how those roles have evolved. And I think with Nickeil specifically in lieu of Conley in this matchup makes a lot of sense, because I think he's probably the best thing they have for Austin Reeves,
who is really for people who haven't seen the Lakers since Luka joined.
Right.
Luka has an ability to make, really good offensive players suddenly great offensive players because of the gravity he brings and also the way he can deliver the ball. And Austin Reeves has really benefited. Austin Reeves is playing at an all-star level the last few months. He's really good shooting. He has been smart enough to figure out where he fits in. What I would talk about with Na and DiVincenzo is Na is the restabilizer and DiVincenzo is the catalyst. If you need a jolt, then you bring Dante into the game and you see what happens. If you need stability, you need this team to calm down and play, good basketball. You bring Nickeil into the game. And I think that when you're replacing Mike Conley, oftentimes it's for restabilization. I think when you're bringing in Dante, you're bringing him in with Nas. I don't think that's a coincidence. And then you're oftentimes leaving Ian on the floor. Lately, you've been leaving Rudy on the floor. It's a really kind of interesting group, but it's meant to be that if you play the way the starters had just gotten through playing, you're blowing your opportunity. You're bringing those guys in to play a different way, to toggle, as you put it, in terms of on offense. You're suddenly, it's a lot more 4 and 1 out, 1-4 out, and also a lot more come down and jack it up, get a turnover and get flying. It's the Wolves version of the Iowa Ants.
Let's just grab one more break here. Wanted to let you all know that Falling Knife Brewing Company is the place to be for watching these Wolves games on Saturday night. As you can see, if you're watching on YouTube right now, how Falling Knife sets it up is they do have the tap room and they have projection screens in there and the sound on and all of those sort of things. But they also, because it's the spring, they get this big TV truck outside, and it's kind of like, bring a chair and stadium seating around the TV truck outside, which obviously has sound and all that too. Obviously, many of you went to Falling Knife last year to watch the Wolves in the playoffs, and I just think what better place to be on Saturday? And I mean, I guess it's 5:30 here Central Time. So you're gonna get a little sunset, with the Wolves in the background. I don't know. It looks like a lot of fun. Yeah, we'd love it if you went to Falling Knife to watch these games. I think we'll try to, we just cut the schedule for this whole for the whole playoffs here. We'll try and get a live show in over there, maybe between games 3 and 4. But for every game, go to Falling Knife Brewing Company in Northeast Minneapolis. It's the Wolves Bar in Minneapolis. All right, Britt. And this can be related to the series in ways too. But you wrote your column this week. I know you're going to write another preview of this series, but your column earlier in the week was kind of measuring the Wolves' regular season. And I think you wrote in the piece that you predicted 51 wins for the Wolves this season. Obviously, they win 49, and you kind of went through the reasons why they didn't quite meet that level, but were close. Which one of those topics from that do you want to get into?
Well, what was interesting to me was I was calling the Randle-Nas thing an issue, an X factor, whatever you want to call it. It never faded. I mean, that is, when we look back on this season, especially if it's a first round exit or a championship, if it goes one of the two ways directly now, it'll be kind of the Julius Randle season, because how to use him, where he fits, how he acclimated, how he didn't, has been a really strong sub-theme of the entire regular season. The fact that Finch has evinced such an amazing loyalty toward him and has gone out of his way to make sure that anybody who was suspecting any change in his status as a starter and as a bedrock of this rotation were going to be dissuaded from that opinion. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting how strongly Finch put his game methodology and frankly reputation as a coach on the line to make that work. And Randle appreciated it, and Randle did, as everybody's talked about, really broadened his game, really worked hard to be a different player. If you remember the very first game Randle played against the Lakers to start the season, or even games in the first month compared to the way he plays now, I mean, he has evolved tremendously. It took way too long for everybody to figure out that Randle is a really good post defender against a classic big. They had Nas doing that in the first month of the season. One of the huge mistakes, which I didn't mention in the regular season thing because there were so many other things to work on. But I also think what's interesting about this regular season and typical of the last regular season is that Rudy-Gobert and Naz Reid are a phenomenal duo on defense. Mm-hmm. I mean, the eye test doesn't leap out at you when you watch that. But the numbers tell you that they are incredibly good at defense together. And maybe it has something to do with the way the offense plays, also, because I do think that, there's some efficiency there. They don't turn the ball over as much.
Well, let me weigh in on that.
Yeah, please do.
So what you went through was just kind of, specifically comparing the Gobert and Reid front court option to the Gobert and Randle front court option. For the season, Nas had a better net rating than Julius Randle did. Nas's net rating was plus 7.4. Randle's was plus 3.4. When it was Reid and Gobert out there, it was a net rating of plus 11.8. When it was Randle and Gobert out there, it was a net rating of plus 5.4. Those don't seem like a huge difference in numbers, but in the context of net ratings, those are a very, very big discrepancy because it's points scored versus allowed per 100 possessions over the course of an 82-game season. It's big. A factor in this that we need to weigh to some degree is that the Gobert and Randle minutes predominantly come at the start of games, the start of first quarters, third quarters, and then oftentimes end of games. at those times, you are always getting the opposing team's not just starting lineup, but certainly star player. Where Reid and Gobert get the majority of their minutes together is at the start of second quarters and at the start of fourth quarters for like a good long stretch. It is, we've talked about that lineup a ton. What's the lineup that the Wolves play at the start of second quarters and fourth quarters? So it's Conley, Gobert, Reid, DiVincenzo, Alexander Walker. That group has like a plus 30 net rating on the season. They kill second units. They kill teams when the opposing team's star player isn't out there. Now, I don't say that to subtract completely from Naz Reid and the Gobert pairing. I just think that does explain a bit of the differential there. Maybe still leaving Naz Gobert is higher than Randle-Gobert, but I think that's part of the gap. And I just want to, when we are wrapping the season or whatever, and particularly when we're thinking about the free agencies of both Naz Reid and Julius Randle this summer, those numbers are going to scream, hey, just do Naz and Gobert, when some of the context screams that the Naz and Gobert lineups are at least a little bit juiced by the people that they've been playing against.
I will grant you that, but I would push back in saying
that was coming.
I would push back in saying that
I'm just doing devil's advocate a little bit.
No, and I get that. But then Gobert, when he sits and it's Naz and Randle, that's a lower rating, and they're playing the same putzes. I mean, it. Yeah. And what's interesting about this is the dynamic with Cat was almost exactly the same, albeit a little bit closer together. I mean, Cat and Rudy were not as strong, especially on defense, as Naz and Rudy. And Cat and Naz were the worst. Cat and Rudy were second, as Randle and Gobert are second. So in other words, when Rudy's on the floor, the net rating is higher among the three big configurations, however it is. But Naz with Rudy is always better. And yes, you are correct that some of that is the so-called second unit, or, less people on the floor. But the numbers are so extraordinary.
Absolutely.
That
absolutely.
I mean,
it's two straight years of like a 100 defensive rating with Reid and Gobert on the floor together. 2 straight years, and it's like 1,000 minutes both times.
The All-Star break in 250 minutes or whatever, Rudy and Naz have a net rating of plus 27.7. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just like, and I get it. They played a lot of bad teams that had terrible second units, and they had the rim was open for Rudy 24/7 against those teams. Right. But how does that explain the defense? I mean,
lesser personnel out there for the defense too. But the point is we're going to see obviously Naz and Gobert play together a lot, and it's going to be in the playoffs, and it's not going to be against second units, but it is probably going to be without all three of James, Doncic, and Reeves out there. Probably, I would assume it's 2 of them, maybe even 1 of them for pockets of time when they're out there against that. And you know what? They're great. It does, like, Naz and Rudy are great against those type of groups or whatever type of groups. You're going to get good defense. You might not get 100, like 1 point per possession defense out of the Wolves allowed, but yeah, we're working on a big sample size. Even if a lot of that sample size is against lesser groupings, it's been good, and the assumption should be I don't put whatever 5 you put out there against the Wolves defensively, it's going to be better with Reid and Gobert out there than it is going to be with Randle and Gobert out there. I agree with that. It's just those numbers scream, what the hell are we doing? Why doesn't Naz Reid play 36 minutes a game? Which is, I know a lot of people's opinions. I just feel, to me, I feel that sometimes, and I don't feel that sometimes. And I just think it's closer than the numbers suggest.
I would grant you all of that. Here's what I would say. It's been my position from opening day to now. If you take the intangible things away, which is that Julius Randle does not want to be demeaned as coming off the bench. I mean, I think that has to be part of it. If you look at what Rudy-Gobert and Naz Reid can do together, and also having them surrounded by Ant, Conley, and McDaniels, I mean, we saw the way Naz and McDaniels worked when they were on the court, when they were the only bigs in the front court. We saw what Naz and Rudy could do together. We saw what Mike Conley can do when he's the primary playmaker and not standing in the corner. Naz in the starting lineup makes more sense as a skill set than Julius Randle in that starting lineup in terms of spacing, in terms of defense. Conversely, bringing Randle on the court with his buddy DiVincenzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, two guys who are ideal for those drive kick-out things that Randle is really good at, and having, a Jalen Clark or somebody else, having Randle be the fulcrum on that offensive unit also makes a ton of sense. Sure. So I've always felt like give Randle the same amount of minutes and give Naz the same amount of minutes. And so what that means is you have to lean into Randle's role a little bit more in terms of his role, maybe sit Naz first, but if there wasn't politics, for lack of a better word, if there were just, this is the way the team plays best, I think at the very least it should have been tried that you have Naz in that starting lineup. The reason it wasn't, I believe what really proved it, was Mike Conley is a guy who can graciously say, all right, I'll sit. And they brought DiVincenzo in to make that starting lineup different. Yeah. And all of a sudden, that's a better Randle ally in that group. And it functioned better.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's an all in theory sort of thing, because there's no way in hell that Finch is going to start Naz Reid over Randle or play Reid and Gobert more than he's going to play Randle and Gobert. And, and maybe he's going to have to pay for that, in this series, and we'll see how it goes. I mean, if those numbers aren't enough of a proof of concept, maybe if this series goes wrong, that will be more that will force some sort of change. But again, my opinion is it's not super clear one way or the other. I'm with the idea that during the regular season, I would have liked to see a more genuine look at Reid and Gobert, even if it was starting or not. But this is what this team has decided to be this year, and Randle has that primacy. Last thing. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I just want to clear the air here. I think it is clear, but I also think that Chris Finch has forgotten more about basketball than I've ever learned. Sure. And I'm not, I mean, I can only critique the game by what I see, what I feel, and what I figure out. That doesn't mean I'm right, and it doesn't mean that I should get on my soapbox every time and say this is what should happen or not happen. I'm covering a team, and the way the team plays, I may not agree with it 100% of the time, but I need to be objectively seeing how it works. Mm-hmm. And right now they're 49 and 33 on the season, and they got into the playoff out of the play-in, and they were a top 10 team at both sides of the ball for a lot of that growth period. Finch has every reason to justify what he's done thus far. I've got numbers and an opinion, but I'm just a guy that, I haven't never made my living coaching or playing basketball. So I defer.
No, but like, that's the way to go. I mean, we've talked about this all season. We've gone through different iterations of this conversation, and I think it would be wrong for us, even if we know less than Finch, as we obviously know less than Finch, to not bring up things that have stood out to our eye test over the course of the season as being potentially problematic, and then also have some numbers that back up a little bit of what that eye test is. The third factor is bringing in context, what I'm trying to do with some of those things. But yes, this is all up for debate, as it very much will be in the offseason when this team is going to be deciding who the power forward of the future is with this team, or what the power forward position is going to look like going forward for, basically the ramp up into Ant's prime. It's an extremely critical decision, and one that could, if you choose wrong, could really mess you up, So this is real. And I think, like many things related to Randle, a lot of the judgment is going to come from the postseason. And if he throws up 39% from 2 and 28% from 3 with, more turnovers than assists, as are his current playoff numbers, then yeah, different things need to be considered. That eye test needs to be reconsidered, and those numbers need to be reconsidered too, as you build out this team going forward. The last thing I want to get to, we don't want to spend too much time on it, but just, you wrote about it a bit in your kind of season, recap thing, but I think it's very relevant in this series too. It's just the value of the Wolves' depth. I think this is as good of a bench as it gets in the NBA. You have obviously a legitimate sixth man of the year candidate, the reigning sixth man of the year in Naz Reid. That's a win for your bench, obviously. And then the other two are Dante DiVincenzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I don't know if there's a better 6, 7, 8 in the league here. And I'm curious to see how that, because it's been so important during the regular season against second units, how much that can dominate in the minutes when they're out there against this Lakers team, who does have, not that they have no depth, but they don't have that caliber of 6, 7, 8. It should be an assumption, right, that this is a big leg up for the Wolves.
I think so, and a lot of it has to do with, again, I mean, I talked about a lot about Dante and Naz being the kind of players that can explode, and I think that kind of explosive offense. Put it this way: what the talking heads want from Ant, I want from the bench. I want to see that second unit come in and go double digits over the opposing team. And if that happens, then this is a real interesting series. And I think that is an easier bet to make than Ant being Superman against everything the Lakers throw against him.
Right.
But I also think we have to get ready for the idea that we're not going to see Jalen Clark in this thing, which is sad, not only because he offers comic relief in the way he plays in a manner not seen since Corey Brewer.
Kogi.
Oh yeah, Kogi was great. But I mean, Brewer, the thing about Brewer though was that I mean the whole effective but crazy, but anyway, I think
I don't think we'll definitely not see Jalen Clark.
Well,
I mean,
if Jalen Clark plays more than 20 minutes in this series that are not garbage time, I will be surprised.
Yeah, but that's that
well,
place,
But
like,
I mean, that means, put it this way: he's a break glass guy. He's a guy that, all right, Jaden's in foul trouble, and so is DiVincenzo. Or something,
Well, that's what I'm saying is, it's break glass in case of emergency, but we do know what the emergency is. It's Luka Doncic, and
exactly.
That's where
what I would like to see, and again, this is a nitpicky thing, but Finch proclaims his faith in Clark's offensive ability to not make mistakes, but he doesn't trust it, and I think he should trust it. I think he ought to. I don't think it's a bad bet for the present, and it's a really good bet for the future. If Jalen Clark gets a little bit more time to show that he knows how to make the right play at the right time there. And there have been times when he's been overwhelmed, and we've seen it. He's a rookie, and even if he's an old rookie and a very disciplined rookie, he's still a rookie. And so there is risk in it, and I get that Finch may not want to do it, but and so I'm resigning.
I believe in his shot, though. I believe in his shot. And when they leave him wide open and they try to give him the Jordan McLaughlin treatment that we've seen in previous, I have a lot more confidence in Jalen, which is crazy. I would have never guessed I would have been saying this over the course of the season. But I don't remember. I was talking to you yesterday at practice or somebody else, but
it was raining threes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just, going to games before, and I'm not saying this is like the greatest measuring stick of the quality of a shooter is what I'm anecdotally taking in during practice, but sometimes it plays out, and oftentimes the guys who are like, I'm not trying to rip on J-Mac here, but I've seen this from Jaden McDaniels too. The guys who are more streaky shooters in their game logs, that to my eye shows up when I've watched them in those times, and we're watching a lot of this every game. You're seeing a lot of this, and I'm telling. I mean, I know you've seen it too, but just to listeners, that Jalen Clark in an open gym setting knocks down threes at a high rate, not like a non-shooter, and that, in addition to the fact that he shot over 40% in the limited sample of when he's been out there this season, it gives me, if they need to, if the emergency comes, they need to break that glass because they want him out there to maybe be the Kyle Anderson guarding Luka, right? That because Jaden got in foul trouble, like that's going to happen at some point. That could be Jalen Clark, and I'm not super scared of him taking those open shots because I think the kid wants him. That's the thing. I don't think J-Mac wants him, and I don't think Jaden McDaniels wants him when he's missed a couple. Like Jalen Clark, it's just a mentality thing, and that's the type of mentality that I wouldn't mind having in my playoff rotation, even if the player's a little bit limited. The last thing I wanted to say with the depth is, I kind of I feel like somewhat diminished DiVincenzo when I was talking about Alexander Walker being the replacement for Mike.
He's just different. He's not worse.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's just different. And I think Dante's huge in this series. And I think he's huge for some of those, as you were talking about, some of the riskier times, those groups that don't have Gobert out there. And it's like hitting on 16, like Dante is the 5 that you draw, like that. He is a huge weapon for this team and basically every lineup configuration because he can play with Gobert as well. He does have a comfort with Edwards. He doesn't play with Conley that often, but when we do, that's just a natural falling into position there. I mean, I think Dante DiVincenzo, as his playoff sample size and statistics have shown positive returns.
Right.
I think he's a guy that we can and should expect a lot of in this series, and absolutely a guy who, I expect to be hella competitive and not have the moment be too much for him at all. Like it's an awesome playoffs bench. Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Yeah, it's about folding those pieces in effectively to the rest of your rotation, but I don't know. I just think sometimes we forget how blessed this team is with the 6, 7, 8 that they have. And then even, Jalen Clark is 8.5 or whatever he is.
Right. Yep. Hat tip Tim Conley.
Anything else you want to hit from this series or that you mentioned in there? I guess we're going up on like 90 minutes right now, but
I'm good. No, I think I'm going to do a mid-post Zoom tonight.
Yes. Sorry, I meant.
Oh no, that's okay. I wouldn't have thought of it either. But it's the usual thing. This will be only the second one I've done this year. The staffing at mid-post has been more in flux lately, so it hasn't been as easy to schedule. But it is a good time for it. I'm between this pod and a column. So I got a lot of things on my mind. I love taking questions from people as I do at Falling Knife. Questions you never know where, the course of the conversation is going to go. If you go to my Twitter or Blue Sky feed, there'll be links. It's a free registration. And I've had as few as 20 people and as many as 100 show up to ask questions at this kind of group Zoom. It doesn't cost anything. I will make an impassioned plea for donations at the end of it with the idea that I don't believe in anybody having to pay via paywall for anything I write. And I think it should be voluntary. And if you're willing and able, great. If you're not, you won't be pressured to do so. It's just a little pitch at the end. But if you want to stop by and ask a question or see what other people are asking, That's at 5:30 this evening, which I guess is in about 5 hours.
Yeah, I did put the link to this registration in the
thanks.
show notes. So, if you are listening to this on like Wednesday afternoon, you're not going to have a ton of time to do that before 5:30. But if you are listening to this, which I think a lot of people will be, listening to it Wednesday afternoon right after it drops, if you got here to the 90-minute mark before 5:30, do make sure you click on that. That link is just right below where you're listening to this in your podcast app or on YouTube. It's in the show notes there as well. You got a prediction?
No, not yet, to be honest with you. I mean, I think the Lakers will win the series. I mean, I will predict that.
Which is enough. I'm not a big like X amount of games.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I guess I think a split on the road would be helpful.
Sure.
I mean, obviously, but I really want to see. There are a number of things that need to be seen. I'll put it this way: I see pathways for a mind-blowing upset. I see that. Do I think it's more likely than a status quo result? No, but I would. I'm sad that my head and I mean I don't see the Lakers losing this series, but I see ways in which they could, and they are not ways that the Lakers are necessarily weak. It's ways that the Wolves rise and demonstrate what they have in them that is underrated around the nation for this team.
And I would echo that. And I think there's a possibility that the Lakers show areas that they're weak too, and that would just be the front court would be the obvious one.
They're 16th in rebounding percentage when Luka's been there. And that's
it's what made it comical watching the Dallas clips back, because I'm like, I don't know, is this even relevant?
Well, I mean, certainly that Luka confronting an opposing defense, it's relevant in that respect. In that, if there's a weakness. And now he's got LeBron. I mean, they're playing 5-level chess out there together. And if LeBron was 10 years ago, LeBron and current Luka, then they would probably even beat OKC. But it's formidable. Let's put it that way. It's a formidable opponent.
Yeah, I think we'll learn a lot with Game 1 and what that feels and looks like, and where both teams' weaknesses kind of do show. I think that'll help me at least have a better way of making an opinion of how this thing goes. But maybe I'll do something tomorrow as well. Anyways, we got to go to practice today. You guys can follow Britt Robson on Twitter and Blue Sky at Britt Robson. You can read his sort of measuring the Wolves regular season column that's up at Midpost that he wrote earlier this week. I thought that was good. Of kind of like, it helped me think back on the regular season and not just only be thinking about matchups and specifics of this series. And sometimes that helps you paint the current reality of what the team is. So check that out at Midpost. And the plan on the show next will be Kyle and I will do an episode on Thursday morning before we head to LA on Friday. I think that'll be, maybe we'll get some more stuff from practice today, and then also just kind of discuss some X factors. Also, if you didn't listen to the previous episode in the feed, Jason and I talked about it. It was a little bit more matchup specific. Britt and I didn't really get into the who guards who part of it. That's the real meat of the first probably 20 minutes of the Jace episode, if I'm remembering correctly. So plenty of stuff here. Be checking the feed pretty much daily here going forward, and we'll be doing as many episodes as we can surrounding the game schedule and our travel schedule. But until Thursday morning with Kyle, he's Britt, I'm Dane. Peace out.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah.